Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And now it's time for the final list, the top 25 best albums of 2017. You know, of all the years I've put together year-end lists for records, this might have been the hardest that it's ever been. And believe it or not, it's for the best possible reason. I covered a ton of incredible music in 2017, arguably doing more reviews than I ever have before. And even though I didn't give out any perfect scores, no 10 out of 10s this year, it still showed us multiple genres really giving us the goods. From a revitalized rock and punk scene to several country gems, to underground hip-hop making a major resurgence, to even pop putting forward some of its best albums in years. And that's not even getting to the genre-defining oddities that utterly blew my mind. But what this also meant is that we got some cuts. And in a year where I could put together a top 50 and still feel like I'm leaving some stuff off, this was particularly brutal. And once again, I was very tempted to expand this list, but again, I got a limited amount of time to edit these videos and I'm highlighting the best of the best. And that meant, while these could have made it in a weaker year, 2017, they didn't cut it. And I won't deny that hip-hop got hit hard in this direction, as I really wanted to include records from K.R.I.T, Jay-Z, Milo, Armand Hammer, Tyler the Creator, Rhapsody, Yelawolf, and yeah, even Kendrick Lamar on this list, and I just can't. And cue the outrage for everyone that Damn is not making this list, but considering there are easily 5 hip-hop albums that beat him out to get there, not a lot of room to complain. And I don't want to hear anything from the indie set either, that Father John Misty, Kieran J. Callanan, Spoon, The XX, St. Vincent, and Alves also missed the cut. All great albums, to be sure, but not quite good or consistent enough. At least for me. Now, honestly, the most painful cuts came in rock, where Creeper, Chelsea Wolfe, and Arion all miss it, and especially in country, where Natalie Hemby, Angelina Presley, Dory Freeman, and Chris Stapleton all didn't make the cut, and they easily could have. Again, great albums, but limited slots here. But finally, we've got 3 records that would have sparked some controversy had they landed on this list, so there is a part of me that's a little grateful that they just missed it. Jhené Aiko, Brand New, and Niall Horan. Although there is another part of me that would love to see everybody's expression if Niall had made this year-end list and Kendrick didn't, but that's a different story altogether. It didn't happen. But again, those are my honorable mentions, some really terrific records, and now onto the list proper. Number 25. I think that a lot of people tend to forget that the tagline for this show is music, movies, art, and culture. And thus, as much as I would like to discuss all artistic works in a vacuum, when you remove them from the historical or cultural context, you can lose some of the nuance or firepower. And if there was an album that felt more prescient and resonant in 2017 and yet was tragically overlooked by so many people, it was this one.
Oh, where will all my people go? The navigator wants to know.
So I have to stress that even outside of the cultural context that informs the concept album about a Puerto Rican immigrant to New York City who sees her world crushed and bulldozed underfoot by rapacious and uncaring gentrification, and I should add this was released before Hurricane Maria, this album would have likely had a serious shot to make this list. It gets better every time I go back to it. Alyssa Segarra brought a new height of ambition to the Navigator, and taking her folk-infused country sound and showing the complicated journey of self-acceptance to a disparaged heritage by infusing elements of calypso, salsa, and Latin protest music and spoken word, all against production that intensifies the ragged, textured edge that has always been Hooray for the Riff Raff's biggest hallmark in their sound. And while some points might seem a tad underwritten to tackle too much of the journey to make this feel like both a very human story and a clarion call for even just acknowledgement, in 2017, the Navigator's intensity and fury felt all the more resonant and cutting, and that's why it made this list. Number 24. And speaking of highly textured records centered in New York City with pronounced conscious text and subtext,
This is an invasion. I hear exactly what you're saying. It's crazy, it's crazy.
But put yourself in some other shoes. See it as a painting with several views. Do not refuse, become consumed.
This is an invasion. I hear exactly what you're saying. It's crazy, it's crazy.
But put yourself in some other shoes. See it as a painting with several views. Do not refuse, become consumed.
You know, I think it goes without saying that this is easily one of Uncommon NASA's most ambitious projects to date. Taking the structure of the late-night creative process and the scattered voices of some of the biggest heavy hitters right now in underground hip-hop, and then flipping all of it into a layered, incredibly dense exploration of creative experimentation and risk. You know, it's one of the few records where they're warning early on that it will actively alienate part of its audience. Actually has some teeth to it for once. Between the production that gets all the more twisted and abrasive and glitchy while featuring some of his best ever melodic hooks, and the series of guest verses gradually revealing more and more uncomfortable truths that are rarely admitted aloud surrounding social change, an inflexible status quo, fickle audiences who really can't comprehend the artistic process or experimentation, and the necessary imperfections in sound and human behavior that come with this sort of evolution. This is a sort of thorny, crystalline rap you will only ever get from the underground these days, and despite some claims otherwise, this is about the furthest thing from the mainstream. And you know what? Finding it was so worth it. Number 23. So with the shift to my Patreon scheduling process, I covered a fair few records that were a little outside my comfort zone, went to strange places, touched on sounds that I definitely found pretty challenging, and the fact that some of it actually clicked for me raised some terrifying questions about my personal taste. And if you want the most direct example of this, again, I am not really a hardcore punk fan. I stick more with pop punk and post-punk. This isn't precisely my purview or expertise, but I do know quality when I hear it, and Idles brought a slice of white-hot, concentrated rage from the UK that was intensely intelligent, fiercely conscious, and with riotous hooks to back up all the insight, often far more layered than the guttural or bestial delivery might have implied. This is a record that embraces a pure sort of nihilism in targeting toffs that push gentrification and class as a refusal to engage the harsher truths of their existence or the art that they profile, and the message it must be delivered with increasing brutality if that's a necessity. Well, there's certainly a place for it that Idles earns in spades. Just as smart as any public school brat, yet pitching all the pretense to the four winds, Idles is lean, ugly, intensely self-aware, but far more aware of the power structures that they are aiming to burn down. Easily one of the best debut records of 2017. I can't wait to hear more. This kicks ass. Number 22. And on the topic of power structures subverted and deconstructed with intense self-awareness,
I'm a man on a mission. You're a stripper out of love. We're good in the backseat, but we're better up front. And there's blood on my knuckles, cause there's money in the trunk. Keep running out of luck. Keep running out of luck.
you know, honestly, I'm a little bit amazed myself that Alex Cameron made the list with this late entry Forced Witness, but with every subsequent listen, and I've heard it a lot in the past couple weeks, I could not deny it. A pop sensibility that stood head and shoulders above so many of his competition, and yet willing to slyly parody the hypermasculine posturing of so much of it from a character who couldn't sell these songs straight if he tried. So he goes for parody and it works wonderfully. Alex Cameron is smart enough to deconstruct modern masculinity, but he's also empathetic enough to provide a counterweight with some terrific songs that throw aside all the sort of brainless posturing for something that's got a little bit more meat and intellect. And not only does the 80s soft rock tones feel note perfect to the time, they also don't feel like an anachronism now with a lot of the modern lyrical references, making the joke feel all the more resonant and cut even deeper. I am thrilled that so many more people are starting to take note of songwriters in pop scene like Alex Cameron. For pop like this, he definitely deserves a lot more attention. Number 21. This is the record that'll make my list and pretty much nobody else's. Just deal with it.
And if we drive away to the place I love the most, when my lungs collapse and my heart turns black, I'll give my ashes to the coast.
It's been nearly nearly a year since I reviewed Def Havana's All These Countless Nights, and if anything, it's gotten even better the more I've heard it. A straightforward alternative rock formula that might not bring a tremendous amount of grit or heft in the sound, but instead packs a punch with tremendously great melodic hooks, a powerful lead performance from James Veglioli, and the sort of direct, vulnerable writing exploring depression and addiction with nuance and care. A record about hitting burnout and hitting it hard, and then finding whatever you have within yourself to claw out of it, against factors both external and internal that would prefer you stay numb. And I will freely admit, I was on the fence about this record for months, but at the end of the day, great writing, phenomenal hooks, and some of the most refined melodic compositions of the band's career won out, along with an emotional connection that I still can't quite comprehend. Now I want to hear some of that color come back because this was dark, but I'm looking forward to that daylight. Number 20. I think this record has flown under the radar for entirely too many people this year. Mostly because I don't think it was what they were expecting for this particular artist. It wasn't as focused on straightforward bars. It was more conscious and airy and, dare I even say, accessible.
And I really can't take it no more. I've been fighting temptations, my lord. I'm young and I'm restless. And I really can't help it. I never felt selfish before. I've been living so reckless, I know. Tell me, Logie, you help me. I said, Logie, you help me.
You know, Before the Money might have been the project that put Joey Badass on the map proper, but All American Badass was the record that put him over the top. Taking his detailed knowledge of 90s hip-hop cliches and infusing with a record that captures a much more detailed picture of Joey Badass as an MC and a conscious artist, taking a sensitive and yet populist approach to a lot of his commentary. The bars might not have the same density, but the potency of the hooks and the sense of conscious but wary altruism more than made up for it. There's a real sincerity to this record that really clicked for me, along with some of the most consistent guest performances of the year with Schoolboy Q and Styles P, and some stunning melodic production. And yeah, it's genuinely exasperating that thanks to the close release proximity to Kendrick Lamar's Damn, this album will be forgotten by entirely too many when it could have been a mainstream smash, but it's not getting forgotten by me or this list. Number 19. And speaking of hip-hop records that really haven't gotten the full critical acclaim they properly deserve,
Trying to get up to come down. Got to play a shit by the pound. The gold with the Lex and the crown. Make it where them hoes come around. Trying to get up to come down. Booming like a sub underground. The whole city hid and surround. We all on the get up.
when Big K.R.I.T. decided to leave Def Jam and return to independence, I don't think anybody was expecting his first record out of it to be this. An album that could have easily been pitched from a major label and do enormous numbers provided it had the right promotion, even as a double album. And yet Big K.R.I.T. uses his newfound freedom to expand over 2 discs of intensely colorful, textured, and amazingly witty southern rap, bending across trap, bangers, G-funk, soul, R&B, and gospel with amazing ease. And the fact that Big K.R.I.T. not only made a double album that feels accessible either with individual discs or all together, but also managed to make it one of his most bombastic and yet also his most personal projects to date is a marvel to behold. And there are so many little moments I absolutely adore on this project, from the terrific homages to southern legends to the note-perfect moments of gospel that really connect. The best album skit I have heard in years. No joke. If it wasn't for Lloyd's guest presence on 1999, this would be even higher on this list, and for damn good reason. Folks, when acts go independent like this, you definitely want to give them your support, and this was a damn great way to do it. Might have taken a mighty long time to finally get there, but I am so glad that Big K.R.I.T. did it. Number 18. This record kinda snuck up on me. The sort of project that's bound to be overlooked by pretty much everybody, especially outside of Canada. And hell, going into this, I had no reason to expect this would be interesting. The long dormant side project from the frontwoman of a middling indie rock band that probably got more attention for her other supergroup's reunion than this project, right?
Now that I'm fenced in, but I'm just like before. I swore I'll be your warrior. I swore I'll be your warrior. Yeah, I've been
Well, It's the big sleeper hit of 2017, a piano-driven singer-songwriter album where Emily Haines put together some of the most hypnotic melodies, gently enticing grooves, and genuinely beautiful vocal arrangements to tell her story of internal renewal. A simple formula, sure, but the layered complexity of these arrangements is genuinely startling and will only reveal themselves after multiple listens, along with a sense of unearthly poise and control that are mind-blowing in the subtlest way possible and yet incredibly accessible all the same. And when you pair it all with writing that shows genuine wisdom and emotional pathos, it ranks among Emily Haynes' best projects, even surpassing Metric and Broken Social Scene. Too many of you will have slept on this project, especially if you're outside of Canada. Fix that! Number 17. I'm just kicking myself that I only really got into the band this year, but really, given the artistic leap forward that they made, this might have been the best possible time.
You can curse your fiddle till it breaks down at the binding. Curse your locomotive off the rail. And all that trouble you've been looking for is easy in the finding. Well, the devil's in the fine detail.
It seems like every year there's an act that makes my year-end list for just cranking out rock-solid, no bullshit, remarkably sharp country music, but Turnpike Troubadours took the extra step and infused their writing with a level of gravitas and maturity that comes with having to grow up a little bit too fast. The lyrics are the true standout here for once, showing the hard realization of one's own limits that come with age, and yet finding some degree of comfort with all of it and the nuance it brings. And when you pair it with a richly organic Red Dirt production and some of their best ever hooks, you can make a compelling argument that this could very well be the Turnpike Troubadours' best album to date. And all the more reason for everyone, indie country fans or otherwise, to get on board with this. Come on, these guys deserve to be huge. Number 16. Of all the artists I put on this list, there's a part of me that sadly feels this one will get the most backlash. They'll say I'm doing it just because I'm a blinded fanboy and that despite making a critically respected record, it wasn't all that good. Right? This was the comeback album that Kesha really had to make, and my god, I am so happy she stuck the landing here. Infusing elements of psychedelic pop, glam rock, punk, freak folk, and even country into her formula, and proving that she could handle them all. It was the genre-bending glitter bomb of brilliance that characterized Rainbow, a pop record that blew past what so much of the mainstream has always wanted Kesha to be and more. And when you pair it with a journey of personal renewal that feels genuinely earned in the writing, and still lets her cut loose in the second half with a playful vivaciousness that was incredibly compelling, Rainbow was the organic slice of untapped potential that shows everything that mainstream pop and Kesha can be in 2017 and beyond. Perhaps it may be a shade weaker than Warrior overall. It does feel a tad transitional as Kesha moves more towards whatever bright horizon might come, but man, so thrilled to have her back. If you've been sitting on this, been on the fence about this, you'll want to check it out. It's something special. Number 15. I debated a lot whether or not I could put this on my list, and for a reason I don't often consider for these lists. Length. I mean, at 7 songs, barely a half hour, could I really rank it among the best full-length projects of 2017? Yeah, because Felony Blues is the sort of raw, organic country that blew through all of my expectations, both in the richly organic sound and Jamie White's willingness to take some real risks in her content, drawing upon her experiences in prison to flesh out incredibly well-composed and emotive portraits, and then infusing all of them with a stunningly rich neo-traditional tone that is even willing to indulge in the sort of spacey experimentation you might hear on a Sturgill Simpson album. It is truly amazing how much sharp songwriting, incredibly sticky hooks, and real pathos that Wyatt crams into these 7 songs. There's just so much here, and there's not a dud among them. And when you factor in a song like Stone Hotel as one of the best of the year, this was an indie country slam dunk that again deserves way more attention. Come on folks, get on board. Number 14. Okay, yeah, it's on everybody else's list. Y'all knew it was gonna be here. For good reason.
I waited for it, that green light. 'Cause on the aisle,
you don't need me to tell you why Melodrama is the much improved sophomore project from Lord that got rave reviews from critics but not nearly enough attention from everybody else. But I'm gonna say it again anyways. What I truly love about Melodrama is that it took the aura of dispassionate cool that infused pure heroin and set it on fire, revealing the white-hot intensity of a pop genius indulging in melodrama and mining some very real pathos out of her own self-awareness, her self-limiting and self-destructive nature, and the populist spirit that has infused all of her writing and made her so captivating, a millennial balm to salve the wound of faded idols, failed projectors, and society that's routinely castigating them for all the same behavior that every generation has done before, if not more. And when you pair it with Jack Antonoff's best production since Strange Desire, and Lord's increasingly layered and dynamic vocal delivery, it's damn near the best pop record of the year, deserved all the acclaim it got, and it really is just a great, fun album. Check it out. Number 13. So as I said at the very beginning, and it bears repeating, historical and cultural context becomes kind of relevant when you're talking about art. And when you consider how starkly political and polarized the United States has become in recent years, it would be kind of inevitable that there would be an artistic response to the election. And while the conscious powerhouse surged to the forefront, you expected that. And in dealing with the emotional aftermath, artists from The National to Katy Perry stumbled pretty hard. They couldn't capture it. That sort of psychological trauma can be hard to take in and really contextualize. And thus, it fell to an outsider to do it. And man alive, he did it well.
Yeah, you wanted it to be cool. You thought that it would be alright in the morning.
I said my inclusion of Kesha was bound to provoke the most backlash from the general public. Well, my inclusion of Dan Behar's obtuse, goth-tinged sophistopop here is bound to provoke the most response from a lot of critics. And you know what? I get why there's been a backlash to this. In comparison with the more inviting melodies and gentle tones that have characterized the last two Destroyer records that were critically beloved, Ken is atonal and uncomfortable and even more oblique, and yet with every single listen, it clicked for me even deeper. The 1,000-mile stare of a Canadian artist seeing the deeply felt wrongness what was happening south of the border. In particular, a response among a lot of artists that saw some melt off into the mist and others lose all sorts of coherence or feeling. And between the clammy synth tones, the writing that feels all the more pointed and incisive and yet emotionally sympathetic with every listen, and the choice to add more obvious rough edges to complement some of the hooks and progressions that stick in ways that you can't quite comprehend or even quite sure that you like, Destroyers Ken was the album that most aptly captured the overwhelming emotional dynamic of 2017. And while it might not be something that everyone wants to revisit, for me, this year, it was an essential mirror and an essential album. Number 12. You know, I'm not sure how many more times I need to put this band on the list for people to get it, but you can bet I'm not gonna stop when the music is this terrific.
Even though we were lost, you tell us, sing our tribute.
I'll say it, Temples is probably one of the most underrated bands of the 2010s. A retro-leaning psychedelic rock and pop band that's got all the tonal balance and rich production style of Tame Impala, but far better melodic structures, hooks, and songwriting. Yeah, I said it. Their sophomore record, Volcano, was a pivot to more synth-touch pop, sure, but the textures remain as thick and potent, the melodies are just as memorable, if not more so, and the calculated introspection of the writing remains the band's biggest hidden asset. I don't know who they refuse to blow in Pitchfork's marketing department, but my god, they deserve so much better than what they've gotten in the press, especially when they've been consistently proven that they aren't just a nostalgia act, especially in their writing. It's damn excellent psychedelic music that shows increasingly more dimensions, definitely worth your time if you skipped out. They deserve so much better. Number 11. And speaking of retro-leaning acts who probably haven't gotten their fair share of time in the limelight,
When we were young, we said one day, honey, you and I were gonna share a grave. I didn't know it was so soon. No, I didn't know it was so soon.
Ron Gallo is the sort of artist I do not expect to appeal to everyone, but the fact that he hasn't gotten the same buzz as someone like Ty Segall can feel pretty damn annoying, especially coming out of his record this year, Heavy Meta. The fuzzed out garage rock was balanced out with impressive hooks, great bass lines, and the really impressive personality of Ron Gallo himself, whose nasal, sneering delivery made the framing of his blistering commentary on modern millennial and Gen X culture all the more incisive and mean. It's a nasty, lean sort of record that, of all of its Rolling Stones influence, has the brains and wit that the Stones rarely ever brought to the bear, as well as a sense of twisted self-awareness that pushes many of these songs into outright hilarious territory. It's a weird little record, sure, and while it could have easily been insufferable if it took itself a little bit more seriously, the fact that it doesn't makes it an absolute riot and a ton of fun. This was slept on by entirely too many people. I get why it flew under the radar, but you're gonna definitely want to get on this. Number 10. Yeah, I know. I said it earlier this year, I'll say it again here. I didn't cover as much black metal as I wanted in 2017. Hell, I didn't review as much metal as I wanted this year. Part of it was the way my schedule was initially set up on Patreon, where popular consensus dominated, and it was a lot harder for me to vote up obscure metal records given the tier structure and so much other stuff that came out. Hopefully, with a fresh reset in 2017 and a few shifts in the rules that I made throughout the year, I might be able to get around to covering more metal, but in the meantime, still got this. This is a monster of an album, and frankly, I'm not surprised it's flown under the radar for so many. It's not exactly approachable. Fenn's brand of intricately detailed but oppressively huge atmospheric and progressive black metal was tough to take in. Their longest project to date and one of their most massive and unapproachable, but it's also one of their most refined, with incredibly well-balanced grooves, a keen balance between clean and dirty vocals that had real intensity, huge potent melodies in the tremolo riffing, and writing that went the extra mile in describing the baroque nightmare of this death in slow motion. It is an unearthly behemoth of an album and definitely not for everyone, but you know what? There is something about this toxic miasma that dragged me back time and time again, which is why for black metal, it's this high on this list. Number 9. So this was the major label breakthrough for this indie act, and it seemed like in some circles, this was just the excuse they needed to launch all the backlash. One I don't really think was all that deserved, and considering I reviewed this band when I was on vacation, I'm not sure I was fully able to contextualize why that worked in my review. And yet in a bizarre way, it was that vacation the reason why it made this list. I don't think anyone will deny that the war on drugs makes a sort of heartfelt, earnest, contemplative Americana that is not only stridently uncool, but also pulls upon an era of American history and culture that in retrospect is not aging well. But when combined with Adam Granducio's increasingly oblique writing, it made the more glistening layers of a deeper understanding a much tougher sell to some audiences. But if there is an album that had the tones that characterized my roaming across the southern United States damn near perfectly, it was this album. Yes, the writing is impressionistic and trying to find that hazy middle ground of place among one's own memories and experiences, take that measured step forward into whatever might come. But when you pair it with the absolutely huge hooks, the incredible solos, and the amazingly well-textured mix and production, it leads to an album that earns its heartland swell time and time again. And you know what? Even off the road right now, it's so worth it. Number 8. So I said in my previous list that there wasn't a lot of escapist music on it. And while that was true for individual songs that resonated for me the most last year, it's not quite true for the albums, even if you get the niggling feeling that the escapism won't survive complete contact with reality. And the most pronounced example of that, well,
I see the sun go down, I see the sun come up, I see a light beyond the frame.
this was was one of the most gorgeously produced records in 2017. I don't even think there's debate on that. Even the critics who were hesitant on this record have to acknowledge how goddamn beautiful it is, with the embracing of more classical textures to weave increasingly stunning romantic tapestries around Mike Hadrius's wistful desire to leave his corporeal form and confront whatever might come beyond it. But where No Shape actually takes a hard left turn is that he actually does see something beyond that veil that shatters the veneer of escapism, and is thus forced to return to grounded reality, and yet finds among that humanity a sense of peace and beauty that yet is somehow just as potent as the confrontational sheen that ignited off of Too Bright. A narrative arc anchored in the same thrumming electronics and guitar that I've always found the rock-solid foundation of Perfume Genius, one of the reasons I go back to this band. It might claim no shape, but this core of the album is damn near transcendent, and that's why it's on this list. Number 7. For many people, this was the year that introduced them to this band. Some would argue it's their breakout year. I would still argue they deserve far more attention than they got.
Cause I've seen the other side of power. Yeah, it's a game that can't go on. It can break down any hour. I see the faces and I know them all.
I have no idea why more people have not gotten on board with Algiers, and in 2017, everybody ran out of excuses. Taking their fusion of noisy post-punk and bluesy soul and gospel, Algiers tightened up their songwriting, amped up the hooks, and while I would argue the Underside of Power is a shade less consistent than their self-titled debut, the highs were so much more potent. The writing was nothing less than a broadside against unjust power structures, be they race, class, and everything in between. Delivered with the sort of fiery rage and uncompromisingly fierce intelligence that was intimidating to their targets and a necessary shot of adrenaline for pretty much everybody else. This was a year where Algiers felt more prescient and relevant than ever before, and my god, for me this year, it was exactly what I needed, because this ruled. Number 6. And speaking of starkly relevant music that hit a striking genre-pushing high point in 2017,
looking at the money like it's mine to get. I'm the shit, bitch. Everybody down, throw the pistol and fist. I'm the shit. You looking at the money like it's ours to get. I'm the shit, bitch. Everybody live, throw the pistol and fist.
the physical release was only available in 2017, only reviewed in 2017, my first review. It counts, Mike, and no, I'm not cheating putting it on this list. And yet there's a part of me that can't help but notice that dropping this project so earlier in this past year, that means that some critics aren't giving it the same height they might have if it came out in, say, the midsummer or the fall. And yet, while I'll still be the guy who says I liked Run the Jewels 2 a little more, this follow-up is still a titan of absolutely incredible hip-hop. LP is at its absolute best here, infusing more of his underground tendencies and production and flows to bring a complexity to which he and Killer Mike feel increasingly comfortable. And when you factor in perfectly positioned guest performances from Danny Brown and Zach De La Roca, amazingly sharp verses, and a heartfelt intensity that gives the political and social commentary real weight, this was the blistering opening salvo that 2017 desperately needed. And for me, it was one of the consistent high points of this year. Will it be the end of the trilogy, or will we get more from Killer Mike and LP? Honestly, I'll take whatever we get. Can't help but want more. Number 5. This record's gonna fly under the radar for so many folks, and you know what? I get it. It's unassuming. It's independent Texas country that doesn't put on airs and relies on the refined, purified experience. And like before, it's among the best of the year. Hands down.
I've got a second chance, I'm gonna make it count. Make my way out west, maybe head down south. Live a life of a pardoned man, believing in things I don't understand.
It almost becomes easy for me to forget how consistently excellent Jason Edie's self-titled album is. Well, it's because I'm not sure it hits the incredible high points of Daylight and Dark, at least not as consistently. But Jason Edie is the master at taking a pure country sound and refining it into its most effective form. Perfectly structured writing, hooks informed by maturity and pathos that feel relatable, and songs that take on the real-world heft and complexity and make it all go down effortlessly, to the point you almost don't know how much detail and in character is infused into his storytelling and his wordplay. It might be subtle for sure, it might be reserved, almost borderline tasteful, but I doubt that anybody could doubt the quality. because this is something special. Number 4. This was another record I covered on vacation, and there's a part of me that wish I could have talked about this more in detail, because when I make the following claim, I'm sure it'll spark up some controversy, so here we go. Outside of Porcupine Tree, or maybe even within it, this is Steven Wilson's best album.
Here above the clouds, I am free of all the crowds, and I float above the stars, and I feel the rush of love.
So what I've always loved about To The Bone is that it finally shows Steven Wilson playing into his strengths. He's always had a tremendous knack for big pop hooks, and with this record he finally embraced that brand of melodic songwriting, and it worked better for him than I think even he expected, especially when infused with the progressive but accessible melodic composition that has always been his hallmark in the best way possible. Coupled with bringing in some female guest vocalists who bring their own star-making intensity to match Wilson's greatest emotive presence ever on record, and the exploration of a rationalist theme that still manages to find hope and conscientious self-interest in the face of not having all the answers. It's a project that shows Steven Wilson at his most intelligent and nuanced, but also at his most emotive and human. Again, this is the sort of record that I've been waiting for Steven Wilson for years. I get why some more progressive metal fans might not get on board. It doesn't have the same edge and bite, but my god, going pop for him, it was worth it. Number 3. So if you can't tell, I've put a lot of very political albums on this list. But the truth about the majority of them is that they're not really going to change the discourse in popular culture. I mean, I love Run the Jewels and Hooray for the Riff Raff and Algiers and Joey Badass. But the unfortunate truth is that while they certainly fanned the flames behind their audience, they got people pumped up, got the people going, they probably will not get to the people who need to have their viewpoints challenged or changed. Now, if we're looking for the record in 2017 that was on the forefront of that fight, it's this one.
There's no such thing as someone else's war. Your creature comforts are the only things worth fighting for. Still breathing, it's not too late. We're all carrying one great burden, sharing one fate.
I said it before, and I'll say it again. Country music, more than ever, was at the front line of the culture war in 2017. And often showed far more nuance on either side that either side will actually give it credit. And if you're looking for the albums that seriously challenged the political paradigm of mainstream America and actually had a shot of getting out to that audience, Jason Isbell's newest alternative country project with a 400 unit that was critically acclaimed, that was this album, The Nashville Sound. And it certainly helped that it was one of his best. Following the introspective and mature growth of his previous 2 albums, Jason Isbell framed The Nashville Sound as the blisteringly harsh confrontation with reality beyond his own personal experiences. That you can't cure anxiety, that old vices will always linger, that the death of his loved ones lurks in the wings, and while he might not be able to change the unjust power structures on his own that support his own privilege, he's going to goddamn try and say something. And with a slow motion collapse of country radio and the surging relevance of indie country and his own critical ascendance, Jason Isbell made the biggest artistic gamble to get this political in his career, and it shook a lot of country music to its core. Believe me, I was there. I saw the controversy. Oh yeah, also hands down the best country record of 2017. Without question. Number 2. And speaking of artistic gambles, oh boy, this was a big one.
Ghetto children making code words in the projects around the world. Ghetto children fighting a dragon in the projects around the world.
Look, pretty much any year Open Mike Eagle has put out a full-length record, it's gonna wind up on this list. And yet, I'm still a little bit in awe of Brick Body Kids Still Daydream, an absolutely haunting concept record surrounding displacement and lingering trauma in the aftermath of losing your home to uncaring gentrification. It shows Open Mike Eagle at his most conscious, his most serious, and by far his most vulnerable and emotive. Yes, even more so than dark comedy. But when infused with the subtle touches of glitch and jazz to make his melodic and ingeniously structured bars all the more potent, not only does he provide some of his best ever verses and content, but some of his most melodically sound songs, only to rip out the floor beneath you for an album closer that remains one of the most artistically daring choices of his entire career. Layered, brilliantly witty, genuinely deserving of all the critical acclaim it has received. What could possibly be better than my favorite hip-hop album of 2017? Well, number 1. This is not going to be a surprising choice to longtime viewers, especially given the review that I made for this album. And what I found kind of wonderful is that, while there were some who were on the fence about this record on this release, folks seem to have finally come around. And while I'm thrilled that it's actually getting the acclaim that it so thoroughly deserves, for me, nothing else could really top this list in 2017.
No one knows where the back gate flows. The river goes where the water flows. But no one knows where the back gate flows.
Goths by the Mountain Goats is the sort of record that is such a perfect microcosm and exploration of its central idea that it honestly leaves me wishing that John Darnielle would tackle more musical subcultures at this level of poise, respect, and insight. After delivering the best song of the year, the first time the album and the song are shared from the same artist, then he proceeds to not really indulge in gothic theatricality so much as show the reality around it, for both the musicians and the subculture at large, living in a world that has mostly forgotten them or passed them by, taking melancholic keys and textured bass and horns to make a soft rock record that's just dark enough to fit these outcasts and yet just bright enough to show their alienation in sharp relief. Not a celebration, not a deconstruction, just honest and sympathetic with a level of precise homespun detail and meticulous framing that once again shows John Darnielle is one of the best storytellers in modern music. Even if you're not part of the subculture, you can still marvel at the attention to detail, the expanded themes of decay and getting older and treasuring a unique art form that never really felt comfortable with any mainstream sensibility even as it drifted towards there periodically. But if you are in that subculture, or adjacent to it, like I am, it resonated on a level unparalleled for me by anything else in 2017. As such, one of the Mountain Ghost's best ever records, and it's my album of the year. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in 2018.